So tell us, what is the big idea that if we have lots of MFIs, the poor will no longer be poor?
Person's physical cash is sitting in a digital account. No matter where they live, whether it's in the hinterland of Bihar, they have a direct connection now with a range of providers, a range of good product providers. They're no longer dependent on whatever institution happens to be passing through their village offering them a microloan, or whatever government bureaucrat happens to be the person that they interact with in their village. Now they have a direct line. Payment comes from the central government to their digital account. Financial products are delivered from the center to their doorstep through this account. So that's the real magical moment here. Is when you digitize, the person has this direct line. And on the flip side, from an institutional perspective, once you migrate these armored truck-based delivery systems to repair and check-based delivery systems for government payments, that adds tremendous transparency into how government operates. We now have a visibility into the flow of funds all the way to the end customer, for one. And government itself can be innovative once cash is digital. Imagine the moment a head of household is diagnosed by a rural health clinic of having a particular illness. The government can immediately develop transfer mechanisms to ensure that that family does not lose their chief bread earner until that person then recovers. So we can get much more efficient with public service delivery when cash becomes digital. We can talk about how to get there.
So our perspective is really coming from the user or the client, and what we've learned over the past 20 years or so is that the poor, even though they have less resources, are actually they lead much more complex financial lives because they have to manage those scarce resources much more actively. And so the fact that they're also at the same time left out of the ambit of formal financial services, like being able to take loans or being able to save in safe places or being able to insure against risks, actually acts as a double value, or I should say multiple values to them, because on the one hand they have very, very scarce resources, on the other hand they don't have effective means to manage those scarce resources, and so they are using a lot of inefficient means to manage resources. So they take loans at high rates, or the way they insure themselves is, I'll invest in this child and hopefully he'll take care of me in old age, so that's not a very transparent or reliable mechanism of managing your old age. Or they tend to take greater and greater risks because, they won't go for a health checkup because it's expensive to do so, they don't have insurance, and they keep delaying it till the disease becomes too big for them to really manage or even to cure. So with the scarce resources being left out of the ambit of the formal financial system acts as a real hindrance in them being able to really advance. And what we are seeing is that poverty is not a static state, it's a very dynamic state, and people can move out of poverty, they have periods in their life where they have good income, they don't have a lot of shocks, and then they'll suddenly face a trauma or some sort of a risk and they'll fall back into poverty. And what we've seen is that access to formal financial services which are transparent, which are delivered responsibly, can really help them manage those ups and downs much more effectively. So that's where our emphasis on helping them get access to those formal financial services increasingly now in a digital mode, because that is very cost effective, more transparent, as Nat was saying. That's the direction in which we are moving. But just access to formal financial services in and of itself is a huge boon in many cases.
Okay. Gates Foundation works with governments to finesse their regulatory mechanism using certain kinds of expertise that it aggregates into itself or discovers from third parties.
Yeah. So a big piece of it is working with regulators and
So
governments.
it's an expert consulting mechanism seeking not to lobby government, but to allow government to understand its own objectives that much better.
Very well said. Well said.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you are also in the business of governance innovation,
Yes,
but through the regulatory route,
primarily.
primarily.
Yeah.
Can you explain your aim in those terms?
Well, we actually don't work as much on the regulation front, but I think we are adding to what the Gates Foundation is doing in the sense, something that Daniel alluded to is, you create the regulatory structure which allows different institutions to specialize in what they're good at, and if you have the right regulatory structure that unleashes, innovation. I think the way innovation is getting unleashed is in very interesting partnerships that we are starting to see, for example, between banks and telcos. And that's where we play a role in enabling those partnerships, in enabling or creation of business models which make sense for all of these different entities and also make sense for the end client. So, what do those innovative business models look like? And that's where there's a huge role for design and innovation in the kind of work we do.
Okay, let me stop you there.
Yeah.
So, you are a not-for-profit entity.
Well, legally we are.
Legally, you're for-profit. Oh, I didn't know
In
that.
India.
In
the
okay.
US it's a
But
yeah.
eventually, probably you will mutate or something. But let's, for the purposes of this conversation, treat you as a social sector.
We are a
organization.
social business. We are
Social
a
business.
for-profit entity legally, but we cannot distribute our profits. So the end game is to do it in a business-like, sustainable way, but then to reinvest anything we earn back into the business.
Certainly, you're a social enterprise,
Yeah, for sure.
which has as its goal further re-engineering of other enterprises,
Right.
right? So the goal is by transforming the way that certain institutions of capital are operating, you will further benefit end users.
Yeah, because there's a reason why the poor are being left out, right? They're
What
not.
is that reason?
Well, first of all, there is a mindset issue where they're not considered as an attractive market to tap into. Then there are challenges, very real challenges in terms of infrastructure, in terms of cost, in terms of creating those sustainable business models to be able to reach out to them effectively. Their needs are not very well understood. There's, we talk about anywhere between 400 to 800 million poor in India, and they're all seen as, the poor, like one whole. So they are not seen as differentiated segments that need to be approached separately. So there are multiple reasons why the poor are being left out. Now, the work that we do is enabling organizations like Airtel or like ICICI Bank or like a microfinance institution who want to reach out to these segments for various reasons, whether it's business, whether it's regulatory or whatever, to say, okay, how do you do that in the most effective way? Not only for yourself as an organization where your organization goals of profit making or scalability and all are being met, but also it's having a positive impact on the lives of the clients that you're touching. So that's the space that we operate in. Is how do you create those models? How do you create those products? How do you create those partnerships?